Okay, ready? Okay, I would like to call the meeting to order of the Menlo Park Fire Protection District Board of Directors on February 17th, 2026 at 7:05 p.m. Roll call, please, Michelle.
Director Bernstein?
Present.
Director Bloom?
Here.
Director Jones?
Here.
Director Solano?
Here.
Director Cross?
Present. And we'll speak with the pledge of allegiance. The pledge of allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, there were no reportable items from closed session and been done with the record. It is during closed session at 6:51 p.m. We'll go to item 1, which is a presentation by Margaret Bruce, the Chief Executive of the San Francisco Tree Point College Authority. And Margaret's going to be wanting to hear for a long time. And I just want to acknowledge that we have some dignitaries in the room, the mayor of Menlo Park, Becky Mack, the council member from East Palo Alto, Mark Dinan, and Pat Burt, who's council member from Palo Alto. So thank you for being here.
Are they here because you're on the board or?
Well, so the JPA has, they include East Palo Alto, Menlo Park, and Palo Alto. So none of them are on they don't represent their cities.
I do actually.
Oh, you're there, okay, sorry, okay, then that changed.
I was a long time.
Yeah.
I never have. It's interesting.
Anyway,
I've
Margaret.
been out there before, Cedar Creek.
Yes.
Yeah,
Good times.
probably, people are probably keeping an eye on it now.
For our audience, please feel free, if you want, the presentations to be behind you. I know we have a screen here. So you won't hurt our feelings if you're back.
You want to turn around, you want to turn it.
Oh,
yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Margaret. Margaret, welcome, and thank you for doing this, and I mean, it's done a long time coming, but I think it's something that everyone on the board is interested in learning about. So thank
It's
you.
my pleasure, and thank you, honorable members of the district and members of the public, folks who represent our JPA members as well as community members and commission.
Yes.
This is an encapsulation of sort of where we are at the moment. As you know, all projects and all work is sort of this is a snapshot in time. Some of you have heard a presentation to your respective city councils in the not too distant past. Things continue to evolve, and we will try and catch you up. For those folks who are not intimately familiar with the SFC-JPA, I just wanted to give a quick overview. For those of you who may not be intimately familiar, we're formed in 1998 after there was a big flood. 5 members make up the JPA, 3 cities, the 2 counties. There are 4 staff members, you're saying 21% of the agency. And we're funded by annual contributions from our members. Those provide operating revenues like salary, project consultants, keeping the lights on. So the highlights of the history of the JPA, I would say this whole process about creek protection has been a very long conversation. Going back to the 1900s, there was recognition amongst the 3 municipalities, or then 2, that this creek was temperamental and could sometimes have outbursts. There have been multiple attempts at finding a solution, and they have not culminated in anything so far yet, but the Reach 1 project. The Reach 1 project was completed successfully in 2019. What we are working on now are design plans and permit applications for the Reach 2, or the Urban Reach project. That Urban Reach project was bouncing on its toes, ready to be implemented when we had another flooding event in 2022, actually New Year's Eve 2022, and that upended the apple cart. We learned from the data collected during that flooding event that our channel the modeling for it revealed it was 25% smaller than we thought it was, which meant that all of our project designs needed to be at least seriously re-evaluated, perhaps expanded upon, but certainly re-evaluated, and we needed to figure out how to make up that 25%. So as I said, the Reach One project successfully completed in 2019. This has been an amazing benefit to the communities of Palo Alto and East Palo Alto. And further upstream, even Menlo Park benefits from this because it opened an incredibly narrow and dog-leg shaped creek channel into a very wide waterway. It has a low flow channel, it has a wide floodplain bench, and it has levees on both sides. One is more of a flood wall, one is more of an earthen levee. That project also in that floodplain area restored the natural marsh area, and the additional protection for sea level rise and flooding, it's up to a 100-year flood protection project. So, and a quick segue, the community of East Palo Alto, and I don't think I have any pictures of that perspective, but if you are standing on the levee opposite East Palo Alto, in Palo Alto, you can look across the creek, and Mark Diamond can attest to this, you're looking down on people's houses, rooftops, and yards, and you can see how close to sea level, how close to water level those properties are, and those properties are now protected from flooding. When the future Safer Bay project is completed in East Palo Alto, those neighborhoods protected by both the Creek project and the Shoreline project will be protected to the 100-year level and will be able to be, we can file what's called a letter of map revision with FEMA, and those residents will be then able to be exempted from the FEMA required flood insurance for 100-year flooding. So the Reach 2 project has a project goal. The flood of record was approximately 7,200 cubic feet per second flow. The New Year's Eve storm was about 1,500 and a little bit cubic feet per second. Channel capacity, 5,400 CFS. So we're planning to create an additional 1,800 CFS of channel capacity plus 10 to 20% margin of safety. That whole big pink blob that you see there is the modeled flow extent or flooded inundation extent at 7,200 CFS. I would caveat, this is a model that looks at a hypothetical scenario, like where we know the bank is low, where we know it pops up because of a backwater effect. But every storm and every flood is a little different. There could be a log somewhere, there could be a storm drain backed up, there could be, something that got built between when this was modeled and when the flood happened. And so it redirects the flow of water across the landscape in a different way. Based on what we know now, this is the US Army Corps of Engineers certified hydrology for a flood of this extent, where the water would go and how deep it would get. So we are planning to create this, this project schedule is still uncertain, but we are planning for construction in 2028. I want to put asterisks and caveats around that. But we have a Department of Water Resources grant. We would very much like to make use of that grant. To make use of that grant, we have to expend the funds for construction by 2028. Hopefully, we're looking for an extension on that grant. We are now in a project process framework that is asking the JPA and our consulting team to proceed very cautiously and comprehensively. No shade on that approach, but it slows us down enough that it may put this grant in peril. We are in the midst of these negotiations. I'm confident that the negotiations will work out fine. It is, like I say, it is a never-ending movie that we're looking at, and what we're seeing is a snapshot. So when I say construction in 2028, that is my hopeful ambition, that we will both proceed with a schedule, meet the criteria of satisfaction amongst our members, and make our grantors happy. So what the construction in 2028 would entail is channel widening in the area downstream of the University Avenue Bridge. We call them widening sites 3 and 4. We are at this moment looking at widening on the creek channel on the San Mateo County side of the creek. So along Woodland Avenue, or from Woodland Avenue. Taking into account that that is a very narrow thoroughfare. We would need to do traffic, careful traffic, one-way traffic controls. We have very little space for equipment, for movement, but doing that work, the creek is right there by the street. We would otherwise need to approach the creek from the Palo Alto side, where we would have to go through yards and private property for access, and it creates a lot more logistical constraints. So that is our approach at the moment. Once sites 3 and 4 are done, we will work upstream and we'll be working on other parts of the channel further upstream from there on the other side of the University Avenue Bridge. Although we have not landed on a full project alternative, which is the suite of all the possible actions and all of their specific permutations, all of them include, all of the possible alternatives include removing and replacing the Pope Chaucer Bridge, top of bank work, so berms, flood walls, safety barriers of some sort in various places and of varying heights along the creek bank, and replacing the temporary wooden flood wall along University Avenue where it's, along Woodland Avenue by University Avenue Bridge, and taking out the concrete structure that's in the creek channel just downstream of, or just upstream of the University Avenue Bridge. There are other details like how much widening, what the flood walls might look like, whether or not we want to take out or change the private pedestrian bridges that cross upstream of University Avenue Bridge. All of those things create pinch points. Taking them out or replacing them, lifting them up would be beneficial, but we're still not sure, to use the phrase, is the juice worth the squeeze? So we're looking at all those different permutations. What would be most technically efficacious, cost effective, easily maintainable? And the details are probably coming to a JPA board meeting in the fairly near future. We are also looking at additional potential actions. We are seeing that detaining or attenuating peak flows in the upper watershed can be helpful. We have limited access to land. It is in Stanford's purview. Most of the land is in their ownership, but they are also looking at detention and attenuation. So we are soon to see how we can leverage what they're doing to our benefit as well. We have looked at a citizen's request. An underground bypass tunnel will be coming to the board with a summary report about that study. It is, microtunneling is technically feasible, but it is extremely expensive. We can, because of the size limitations of the microtunneling bores, we can only get about 40% of that 1800 CFS that we're looking for. So it would not remove the need for other channel work. We would still need to do bridge removal and replacement. We would still need to do some channel widening. We would still probably need to do some flood walls in some places. It could minimize the extent of widening. It could minimize the height of the flood walls. But the estimated cost of boring is, or an alternative that uses boring in addition to other potential actions is north of $500 million. Yeah. So is it technically possible? Yes. Is it pragmatic? That's for our board to decide, but I'm leaning on the side of that would be really hard. That'd be really hard. So as you know, we also do watershed monitoring. And these days we watch our rain gauges and we watch our flow meters and we watch the USGS gauges and we watch the Palo Alto Creek monitor. As you know, I'm sure the folks in the fire department are well aware of these tools and resources. The JPA has a website where you'll see on the left, that is our website where we have gauges. If you were to go online and click on one of those circles, you could see a current readout of what that gauge is showing in terms of rain gauge or flow gauge, what the flow is, what the rain rate is. We also take a look at the Palo Alto real-time monitoring gauges at those bridges, at those locations. We can tell that if there is, say for example, a very high rain rate in the upper watershed, it's about an hour and a half until it hits the urban area. So if we're seeing high flow in the channel already and a spike in the rain, we know that there's gonna be a spike in the channel height, in the channel water surface elevation as well. The graph on the right is an example of a USGS, the hourly peak flow. The different colors in that graph show what is predicted and its range of probabilities, and the black line is what was actually happening. So if you get in the Wayback Machine and you go to December 31st, 2022, the black line exceeded those color bars by 2 times. The rain rate, the rain amount, the flow amount was so far above what was predicted because the storm came and stalled over the mountains, stalled over the watershed and just stopped and rained and poured in buckets. And the channel was pretty full to begin with. And to make matters more interesting, there were 2 peaks, right, in that flow. So it came on hard, it receded a little bit, and it came up again. Just illustrating that this is what we call a very flashy stream. Our streams in California, especially here, are largely like that. It'll rain hard, the water level will come up fast. Look at how steep that curve is on that right graph. And then it will pretty quickly subside again. And here's our famous Tower of Mordor graph.
Mordor?
Yeah, the Eye of Sauron should be there in that.
It looks like a big tooth.
It does look like a big tooth.
Yeah.
You also know that we're a member of the MAC, the Multi-Agency Coordinating Group. And every year, there's a tabletop exercise in a meeting. The information officers coordinate our messages. The group makes sure that our communication processes, our tools, our procedures are all reviewed, tuned up as needed, and then we're ready to respond when things like this happen. And there's a pretty picture of what can happen. This was the day of the event. So the temporary wooden flood wall is actually doing a pretty good job there. This was a scene on the right.
Mark, New Year's Eve.
Yeah, this was New Year's Day.
Okay, yeah.
It was early in the morning. More than, I think about 40 cars in East Palo Alto were destroyed because they were parked in subgrade parking areas and they didn't know to move their cars.
Where is that wall at?
That wall is on, so Woodland Avenue, if you're looking at the picture on your upper left, that road on your left is Woodland Avenue, and if you were facing exactly across the street, you're at almost Manhattan Avenue.
Thank you.
So Four Seasons.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
Four Seasons would be on the corner on your right, and Manhattan Avenue would be slightly on your left.
That would be on the left. Four Seasons is on the left.
On the left of us.
Left
From
of the white
there,
car.
yeah, pretty close to that, yep.
Got it. Thank you.
So that wraps it up. I'm happy to have anything that lights the remarks.
I have a,
Well, okay, so before we open it up for the board discussion, I just wanna open it up for public comment, to see if there's any comment from our esteemed audience members. I mean, and I can close the public comment, we can ask questions, I can open up public comment. Mark.
Yeah, great presentation as always. I think one of the things that has to be emphasized when you're seeing the rainfall, there's high tide, the water comes in and it blocks the, rain. So it'll be pouring, it'll be low tide and the water all gets up. But if there's a high tide, I walk on this every day and I see it, with my dog. If there's high tide, the water is already coming in and it will really stop the flow. So if there is a weather event and it starts pouring, all of a sudden you go from, it being okay at low tide to being like, oh dear, we might have problems.
Further upstream than the Reach One project. Yes, that is a possibility. We're tidally influenced, probably a quarter of a mile up the stream from 101.
Yeah, just to add a little more context on a couple of things. One is when we did the Reach One project, that was a major accomplishment, but it's really two parts to it. The part that was managed and funded through the JPA, and the part that was the East and West Bay Shore and 101 culvert increase that was then Senator Simidian, who drove that through Caltrain for $20 million or so. So there were really two major parts. When we had the 98 flood, everything backed up. There wasn't capacity downstream that was covered by Reach One, but also 101 and East and West Bay Shore acted as dams. There was nowhere, once the water came over the banks at all those places that Margaret showed, instead of flowing to the bay, it was a lake. We no longer have that constraint. So the Reach 2 area got a significant benefit from the work in Reach 1 and the 101 work. Didn't solve the problem, but it often gets overlooked that where I hear from members of our community that nothing's been done for us. Well, that was a very significant, it basically shrunk the lake and made the lake shallower. Still a big lake there that will happen. And then in Palo Alto, we've done some very major, both storm drain, and we have another set of improvements this coming year, and pump stations. So those also reduced because the volume of water in the flooding is not merely what goes over banks, it's also the storm drain system that gets backed up and no longer flows. The great thing about downstream is that that was sized for a 100-year event with 50-year sea level rise and allowing for significant tides.
And king tide.
King tide. And so that has a great deal of capacity. As Mark said, we still see the tidal influence upstream, but that project was not merely putting a Band-Aid on it. That was anticipating a series of worst events. Lastly, as Margaret mentioned, there's the upstream detention. And this has been a long time discussion with Stanford in several parts. One is off-stream detention and guiding it into basically an area that would be a lake at a flood time. But the other is Searsville Dam, which we went through a number of years of looking at different scenarios. And they finally came up with a scenario of popping a hole in the bottom of the dam. So in normal times, there would be no water in Searsville, and the sediment would have been gradually sloughed out so that it had quite a bit of capacity. When we hit a flash flood, that dam water goes up, still bursting whatever the capacity is in that hole at the bottom, but it actually attenuates the flow, which is so important, is to get us a few hours of capacity because we're a flash flood.
And I would say, not to steal Stanford's thunder, but hot off the presses late last week, we had a call with Stanford University who have said, yeah, so all that sediment that's behind the dam, there's more to that than we thought. It's harder to deal with than we thought. We're gonna have to build a detention basin. Their idea about the off-stream detention basin is going to be very helpful for us, for not just peak flow detention, but also because they will be taking charge of more sediment management. The sediment management, the impacts of Stanford's release of sediment into the creek is thinking about adding sand dunes to the bottom of the channel as that sediment comes downstream. And wherever there's a sand dune making its way down the channel, it's gonna create an area of lower capacity and potential breakout. So that they are taking more charge of this and planning for those kinds of sediment removal or offlining opportunities is really helpful.
I might add, that's really interesting. You might ask, like many of us do, well, if this design was settled on now 10 years ago, why so little progress on Searsville? And the environmental impacts of not only that, changing that dam, but all that sediment and where it's going to flow and trying to figure that out has been the holdup.
In addition, Stanford waited years looking for somebody to be their CEQA lead. And it was finally, I think about 5 years ago or less, that Department of Water Resources finally said, okay, we'll do it. So it's taken that, it's been a while.
I'll close public comment now and open it up to directors. Joe, since he lives right across the street from the creek.
I just have two questions, though, just, these are kind of picky you, but on the Reach One slide here, you talk about the sea level rise plus freeboard, and I just wondered what freeboard means.
Freeboard is extra space. So if you say, okay, I'm gonna build my thing this high, this much of it is a margin of safety. Freeboard is just a margin of safety.
I see.
So we're planning for under the design flow for the project, it should never get higher than this. But sand dunes, but sediment plus branches plus whatever we wanna leave.
So it's not a standard measure or anything, it's just a.
In some places it is. Caltrans actually has a standard for how much freeboard you have before and below bridges. But otherwise, it's just our own professional judgment of what is the cost effectiveness of having an oops factor elsewhere.
Okay. And that's not included in, at some point you talked about, I think a 10 to 20% margin of safety.
Yeah, that's.
Would that be
that's what-
freeboard also?
Yes, that's what we're talking about, is the 10 to 20% oops factor margin of safety.
And the other thing, just because I'm trying to understand, I mean, I've lived here for almost maybe 50 years, but I still don't understand all the politics and so forth. You mentioned 3 cities and 2 counties, but one isn't a county, right? I mean, it's the
Right.
water agency. Is that considered the county?
Both, so I abbreviated that for the benefit of just keeping my presentation expeditious, but neither of them are technically county representatives. On the San Mateo County side, it used to be the county, but is now represented by one shoreline, the San Mateo County Flood and Sea Level Rise Resiliency District. On the Santa Clara County side, it is the Santa Clara Valley Water District. Each of them have flood protection mandates. And even though they are not equivalent agencies, they are the representatives of flood protection interests from their counties.
Okay, good. So that's, I'm trying to understand the politics. Thank you.
Gary, did you have any?
No, Mark actually addressed my initial question, which is what was the correlation to the tides? I guess the follow-up question to it is the most recent king tide, certainly up in the North Bay, was dramatically higher than they had ever modeled the king tides to be. Are yours based on the original model, or are you starting now to increase the effect of the king tides? And of course, that has to correlate with the upflow water or the upstream water event.
I don't know.
Okay.
I know we are taking into account projected future sea level rise.
Yeah.
That is different than a king tide, right?
Yeah.
And so I don't know. I can ask if I.
Yeah, because they have very specific, the whole Bay and the Bay Commission has very specific kind of tidal models for the continual sea rise.
Mhm.
They all got surprised in the most recent king tide.
Right.
Yeah, where it actually closed 101. I mean, it always floods in Sausalito,
Right,
where you get off for Sausalito. The unusual part is flooding 101 further north. And the king tides definitely came up much higher than they ever anticipated. Even in Sausalito, the harbors there estimated was 1 foot to 1.5 foot higher than expected. So pretty significant.
Yeah. Well,
Thank you, Pat, for mentioning the Searsville Dam aspect. The question I have is that there was this Jasper Ridge Advisory Committee that was set up because of the Searsville Dam issue. What was it's kind of like, I really didn't see, I saw that there were 4 recommendations that were done. Which one was actually chosen, or are 4 still up in the air relative to the?
No, unless it's changed. Actually, it's interesting, and so it was the Searsville Advisory Committee, which included the Jasper Ridge interests, because that had become a very critical study area for impacts of climate change, with leading Stanford academics and having international attention to it. So messing with what was going on there was a big deal to them. In the end, they came around and said, okay, we've got to deal with this issue, because the Searsville's been filling with sediment. It's now a very shallow lake and a smaller lake. So we met for 2 years, I think it was in 2015, 16, maybe it was 3 years. Went through multiple iterations, came with difficult compromises, looked at how many tens of thousands of truckloads when they were looking at trucking out the sediment. And the very last meeting, Stanford came and said, we're really sorry, we've all gone through this whole process, but our consultants just came up with a new idea, and it was better than anything else we had spent 2 years on, or at least we still think it was. So they came on board with that, and we thought things were going to move faster than they had, but as Margaret said, between figuring out the environmental impacts and who's going to be the lead agency, this thing has not made progress in 10 years since that design was reached. So it was one design.
They did it. And my second question?
Yeah.
Correct me if I got any of that wrong.
I'm glad you attended. I saw that Portola Valley and Woodside are affected, but they're not on your board.
Right.
What's that?
And I would ask Stanford's not a part of your group either, right?
Stanford is not, because they are a private entity and joint powers are all
Right, they're-
government
Right,
members.
okay, yeah.
That I.
So we communicate and coordinate with them, but they cannot be on the board. Since I wasn't in this seat when the JPA was formed, I don't have that ancient history. Pat may be closer to it, but my understanding is that they were invited, but they didn't want to share in the contributions, because their view at the time was, heck, we don't flood, we're upstream. Good luck, you guys.
Yeah, and they are affected, but really not like the other 3 cities are. They're not really susceptible to the flood.
Thank you.
Not at the scale of that, the Pepto-Bismol spill.
Okay, thank you.
Robert? I have a question. So I'm going further west, Margaret. I know it's probably not as, the effects are not as great, or the consequences are probably not as great, but like in Weekend Acres, which is unincorporated, West Menlo County, actually Stanford lands, right? They can be very greatly affected, where people have got to be rescued from their homes. So like, is one shoreline representing that area, or?
I believe so.
Or
I know
others.
that Len and the One Shoreline
Yeah.
team,
I have not
after
even
New
heard
Year's
anything about-
Eve,
Yeah,
had been involved in that area and had been working with Stanford to make recommendations about how to make that area more safe through vegetation management, through some other consultations with property owners who had chosen to build their homes basically inside the channel or very close to the channel. So it is not in our jurisdiction in terms of where our city boundaries are. So if anybody calls us and says, do you have any recommendations? We can offer friendly advice, but not official advice. Like if somebody says, hey, who's a good consultant? And say, here's a list, you pick.
yeah.
That's
I mean, because Harold used to say that you can predict when all the water's gonna go down to East Palo Alto from Helmets past its driving and Weekend Acres, so it's all kind of related.
It is related.
Right,
Yeah.
so it's just kind of mind-boggling.
Yeah.
I mean, how can, is that the county that would, so they're not part of the JPA per se,
They're not.
even though one shoreline did, okay, so that's
Yeah.
interesting. That that's not part of it, since that is the creek too, right?
Mhm.
And it does flood.
It has.
A lot.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
it has.
Mark, any other questions?
Yeah, I just have one, and that is, I mean, in Menlo Park, they have this golf course that is hungry for water. Have you ever had discussions with them about building some sort of reservoir up there?
You mean the Stanford Golf Course?
No,
No,
not
Sharon
Stan-
Heights.
Sharon Heights.
Off Woodside Road.
No, off of two.
I mean, I know it's not,
They use
It's-
recycled water.
Oh,
They've
on
got a
Sand
big,
Hill.
with the West Bay.
they're taking water also though from, aren't they taking city water, or they had a proposal before the city council to take water from down near Burgess Park or something. Not Burgess Park, the other park on Middle.
Milan.
Yeah, and take it up to their place. I think it was voted down by the council, but it just seems that there are people that would like water. And
The trouble is, I don't know that there would be any way for us to guarantee it, because, you know, as much as my dearly beloved calls me the Queen Water Fairy, I cannot predict when it rains. And if they're counting on being able to catch water from the stream, divert it, and set it aside for summertime use, that opens up a can of water rights issues, as well as, like, for us, it could be helpful detention. But I can't guarantee them how much on any given year is gonna go there. And it's gonna come with a lot of sticks and rubber balls and tennis rackets and whatever, and mud. I don't know if they would want that.
okay, well, it sounds like Stanford, I mean, I know Stanford wants something certainly from Santa Clara County now in terms of expansion. And to some extent, probably something from San Mateo County as well. It seemed like an opportune time to use that lever.
That's a really good idea. I wanna see where that golf course is in relation to our upper watershed channels and where there might be a diversion possibility, because that might be worth exploring. So I will kick that over to our consultants.
I just have to say, I'm one of those people, and since 1968, I've lived one block from the creek. So it's something I've been through all these things and so forth, and unfortunately, except for the city councils, there's nobody that represents the aesthetics of having natural creek year round that you can walk by and
Yeah.
enjoy the greenery and even enjoy the partial year flow
Right?
that goes through there.
Peek
And-
over there and see the steelhead swimming in there.
Exactly, and
Have you
I've seen them, in fact, when I first came out here, we actually swam. I lived on
The
Central
creek.
Avenue in Menlo Park, and we actually swam in the creek.
seen that? Awesome.
And I just hate these ideas of flood walls. I know people, when their house gets flooded, they don't like it, but for all the days that it floods are minuscule compared to all the days that it's beautiful
Right.
and enjoyable. So,
I absolutely agree with you, and we need to figure out how to make it work for everyone, the trees, the view,
The
fish, the residents, it's a hard needle to thread. But I agree with you, I grew up at my grandparents' home a block and a half from the creek in Palo Alto, so they were flooded in '98, so I was there bailing out their basement, but
one last thing though, I will say
I
from an
love the
aesthetic
creek too.
standpoint, I ride my bike every weekend out through the Baylands and out by all the improvements and across the bridges and so forth. I ride on the levee by the airport and go over the bridge there and come back to East Palo Alto. And the things that you have done have been wonderful, so I'm very grateful for that.
And I'm hoping that the Reach 2 part is even going to be even more wonderful, because the trees, the community's love for the creek, and the JPA's commitment to making sure that there are both recreational opportunities and restoration included in the project, because, I'm not about pave it, paint it green.
Well, unfortunately, one of the water agencies was into that, and we see the remains of it now, and it will never go back to the way it was naturally.
Margaret, so Robert brought up a point last month that about notification, especially down in East Palo Alto. How does that happen?
Notification about,
What is it with the levies or?
It was something we talked about
so,
in terms of emergency when the
Ah.
levees, you know, are gonna go up and then, especially on the backside of East Palo Alto. And once that improvement is made, that's gonna be the first point of high tides and king tides or whatever coming over that particular levee. And once the water come over, the houses is right there, so it's about the notification part.
okay. You know what, since you and I spoke, I have not had a chance to delve into that, since the JPA is not a like emergency response agency. What I know about is watching the tides, watching the storms, you know, watching what's gonna happen. To me, it would be a reasonable thing to maybe put the same kind of video cameras watching the tides, watching the creek channel in Reach One downstream of, you know, the Highway 101 camera, so that we can see what's happening, and then we can call Chief Lorenzen and say, hey, are you seeing this too?
But I think the most important part is how much advance notice will those residents really have? Like the more the merrier, so to speak, but we don't really know the severity of it and how fast it rides, but the advance warning can be important because right at one section of backside of you know, out of the Illinois area, they're just right there. And if the water go over that levee, I think all those homes, which I counted so far, is about 581 homes back up in that one section.
In that south eastern corner
Right.
of East Palo Alto,
Right.
yeah.
And I know that because it's just gonna be like a bowl catching water. So anyway, that's kind of my similar thing, but I think figuring out between probably the fire district and
Mhm.
and the KPA.
And the city of East Palo Alto for what kind of storm drain capacity, what kind of pumping capacity. If we are looking at, so in that area that you say is gonna be a bowl, when the Safer Bay project is complete, part of the project's requirements are gonna have to be, how do we address interior drainage? Right? So that's what you're talking about, is that bowl that's gonna be created. So the city of East Palo Alto is gonna need to look at how they do stormwater management. And for that interior drainage, there's gonna probably need to be some kind of, oh, what if, you know, Steven Spielberg shows up with buckets and we need to pump water out of this bowl or move it some way. So we will, as part of that project, we will need to be having those conversations as those designs progress.
Yeah, I add one more thing. It's been controversial on this board for the last 10 years, but some of us have been talking about having some sort of a warning system, kind of parallel to the tsunami warning that you'd have at the coast, where you have hours or an hour or a long, many hours in some cases there, but at least an hour and a half. They didn't used to have so many sensors up high. Now they have a lot more sensors, and we could have a warning system, but it can't be one where people are expected to log into something or go to some website or something like that. It could just be a simple, you know, kind of audio alarm.
A text alert or a buzz that happens on your phone or something.
Yeah, or just a siren, basically, like the old, you know, air raid things, and get people's attention, and where they've gone through some sort of rehearsal to know where they should go when that happens. And the city agencies have not been good at having emergency preparedness that way. I think the East Palo Alto one, the emergency thing that they put out, the last time I saw it, it said that people should gather at the San Mateo River, which only exists in, I think, the Philippines is one place, and somewhere in South America is another place. And it was just I asked the person why he wrote that, and he said it was a placeholder, but the council approved it and everybody, and it's there as the emergency plan, but nobody ever looks at it anyway, so it doesn't matter, and there's just something wrong with that.
I
Most
think,
of that has to get back to to what I think the district community engagement unit is really kind of focusing in on, disaster preparedness, as well as understanding how to engage the community. And I think those are gonna be the boots on the ground kind of activities gonna really make a difference. Besides, which you just have to mention that there's a warning system that can work for as things that take place with the videos or some other alerting system like they have up in Atherton at the dam there.
In that, you're off of Wash Road. Yeah. So,
Anyway,
In defense of East Palo Alto, we did, last year, budget money to completely redo our emergency plan. So that's not accurate, what you just said, that was accurate 2 years ago, but we're redoing everything about our emergency planning for the first time. It was not a priority of former councils, it is a priority of this council, and I was vice mayor last year, and Mark Berry was mayor. We had a study session on it, and we are very aware of the lack of preparedness, and we're looking at setting up emergency shelters, we're looking at setting up, completely redoing evacuation planning and things like that. So you're right that it was a terrible situation. We should be having an update shortly before we call to City Council, and hopefully some of these things will be addressed because it is a known weakness. I mean, there was a emergency plan that was apparently at the library that nobody had actually met it, and we've had something like 8 or 9 city managers in the last decade, and when you have that kind of churn, you don't have any continuity, and it's a real weakness. But what I'm terrified about is a huge earthquake and East Palo Alto not being ready, because we're not ready right now, and we don't have any of the infrastructure in place that we need to have. And unlike Atherton or Menlo Park, it's not everybody in East Palo Alto is affluent, and you have a significant population that will need, government assistance. And right now, I was at the emergency preparedness meeting for the county. FEMA's been gutted. People that were there, 6 months ago are no longer there. We can't expect help from the feds, and there's 6,000 beds in the Bay Area for emergency shelters. So that's for Oakland, San Francisco, Hayward, Redwood City, whatever. And so we're very much on our own in the event of an emergency. And we all hope there is never a major emergency, for the next 100 years, but that's not really realistic. But you're right, East Palo Alto was terrible, and it's still probably terrible, especially Menlo Park has done a better job. Atherton has done a much better job, but we have a lot of work to do, but we have been working on it for the last year, so.
Excellent. I just want to add that the San Mateo County Department of Emergency and Management has, about 2 years ago, they had a new director come in who is really just looking at everything throughout the county, working very closely with cities. I don't know if you're on the and doing a lot of work to get everyone prepared for emergencies. In the Menlo Park, we just 2 years ago hired an emergency preparedness director who's really gone through and is working through all of our paperwork, but it's
a big task. You guys
It's
are
a
so
big
far
task.
ahead of where we are.
We weren't, though.
We're ready to do that.
yeah.
But from her, I forgot what her name is.
Trudy.
Trudy, she said,
yeah.
do not count on the federal government, they don't exist
Right.
anymore. They have gutted FEMA. I'm sure the chief would know a lot more about that in details, but I'll take her word, and when FEMA's gutted, the state isn't gonna be much help. They can be somewhat helpful, but for a regional disaster, every city is gonna be kind of on their own.
But there is, not discounting that, there is a lot of work going on at this county level.
Yeah.
I assume it's also happening in Santa Clara, and
for sure.
there is, really good preparation, also taking into account that FEMA cannot be relied on.
Yeah.
To say the least.
So there's no earthquakes in the next 10 years, because, it's gonna, to rebuild FEMA is gonna take years after the Trump administration ends. It's not just gonna happen overnight. So anyway, that's,
Palo Alto has an emergency director that has the same, at the same level as the fire chief. So if you want a model, that's the model.
we gotta get $1 billion budget for us to run.
So Mark, how do we work with like Palo Alto Fire? When there's this kind of incident flooding and I guess after the floods in the hill country in Austin, you know, like in Texas. Where, you know. I mean, that was just an unusual flood, and I mean, there are lots of flash floods, but the warning systems were non-existent, and granted, that area has very, very little connectivity, but I think at one of the schools, actually, in fact, one of the firefighters who was deployed there said that they had to be evacuated during the time they were deployed because there was a flash flood, but there was a school that had a warning system, that everyone got together because that was a major thing. We had to be, how do we work with Palo Alto Fire?
Sure, I mean, if there was a significant incident on the scale of Texas.
Well, it's
in that
not gonna
range,
be
like,
that,
something like that, we would form a unified command. And it would be fire and law enforcement from both counties together, along with whatever other resources are necessary, but on some other scale, things like what happened just on New Year's Day in those pictures there. Yeah, we're all just dealing with our own flooding issues there, but significant incidents like that, we come together, form one command post, one voice, and one.
but the New Year's flood for a lot of people was significant.
Sure.
Right, so I don't know, I mean,
I'm not current on
better
the MAC efforts.
yeah.
So in 2010,
Well, because we're in two separate counties.
well, but in 2010, we had a near flood. And as was noted, we had just recently created a separate public safety department, a small one, of emergency services. And we were hyper-focused on earthquakes. And after that near flood, I really raised the issue of, well, we've got a much greater need for flood coordination. At that time, we didn't have a mutual aid agreement, so we pushed that to immediately. And then we did these multi-agency drills at your center off of Willow. And are those still happening periodically?
Yeah, every year we have a
Every year,
tabletop
okay, great.
exercise.
Yeah, good.
And every year we look through the MAC agreement, we look through that multi-agency mutual aid agreement. We make sure that all of our contact points, our roster of MAC members is up to date. Those include law enforcement, public safety, our emergency coordinators in our various cities, our the JPA team and Valley Waters team and One Shoreline team.
Well, and for instance, you have the marine capability that we don't have. And so that's one thing that we rely on that. And I think I don't know which year that you guys came and helped on that. So it's hopefully sharing of resources.
So every year we do have an exercise, we do have a group that spans the counties and the cities of the JPA. And as Pat said, it's a formal mutual aid agreement. So there's a way of sharing resources and then settling accounts afterwards. Remember, you took my black belt after the very right, you go to me, right?
Okay, any other comments or questions? I'll open it up to public comment one more time and I'll close it. Okay, thanks, Margaret. I hope that I learned something
That's great.
a lot, because this is the first time I think we've ever had a presentation of this detail.
Plus the give and take from
Yeah, from
variety
the
of
actual
perspectives
stakeholders,
is really good.
yeah, both sides of the creek.
And somebody who has a long institutional memory who can support this in a way that I can answer. Thank you, Pat.
Thank
We
you.
appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate your time.
Thank you. You might be hearing from us.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Pat. Thanks,
Yes.
Mark. Thanks for being here. Thank you.
That's great.
Okay, moving on to the fire chief report. Mark.
You don't have to say for the.
You should say so. Fire chief. I've never heard one.
Oh, no.
And it's even tougher because he has no big fires to talk about or anything.
Director Corral and members of the board, members of the public, thank you for attending and for any of our staff online. Thank you. I will share with you an update of what's gone on in the last month in my fire chief report. First of all, just a quick update on Fire Station 1. That is our good project we have going on. I forgot. We are going to be rebuilding this site here. And just the highlighted items on the report right now, just were that we revised or incorporated comments into our document for the city of Menlo Park based on planning commission and neighborhood input. And then on February 10th, just last week, the city of Menlo Park awarded a contract for our CEQA work to a consulting firm that was approved. And we're anticipating the study will be completed in 20 weeks. And we have some other things that we'll go through after that. That's really the only update on Station 1. Internally, recruitment and promotions, this was just an internal promotion. We promoted Ryan McGraw, Deputy Fire Marshal. It's not an addition of any new bodies into our thing. We had previously when we promoted Bob Block up to Assistant Fire Marshal, we held on to that position as an allocation that we could use internal promotion to kind of help out our up and comers become supervisors. So Ryan's in that position now. His old position just remained vacant. Update on our community engagement unit, things going on from Heather and Amandeep. Our Connex box that you saw outside, now we have renamed it as the CERT Community Hub. It's now been relocated to its new home at Ravenswood Family Health Clinic in East Palo Alto. We are going to be working on the next box or two boxes pretty quickly and placing them in Menlo Park and Atherton. For those members in the audience that haven't seen it, at some point in time, we'll give you an opportunity to see it. It's a wonderful unit that is self-sustained, has Starlink on the top, has inverters and solar power, ham radio station, hotspots for community members. It's got charging stations inside. So you just think about, when we lost power for forever, having something like that where people just, most importantly, need to be connected. There will be one in each community to begin with. Really a neat tool for them so they can go connect to Starlink, reach out to family members, let them know they're safe, et cetera, because when the power goes down, so does all of our Wi-Fi and our cell service.
We should have a tour.
Yeah, once we get it opened up, we can also do that.
It's a great.
CERT classes, we trained our CERT members in traffic control and winter storm prep, very appropriate for the time that we're in right now. We did a City of Menlo Park staff CPR and first aid class. We did a job training, staff fire extinguisher training. We were presenting at an aging symposium at Little House in Menlo Park and did a Menlo College Community Affair event and a couple of presentations for Los Lomitas safety presentation for K-3 students. Engine 6 visited the MA Cooperative Preschool, and we had a career day at Boston Middle School. Also going on, you'll notice I put a note in here, no fire response analysis report. The reason for this is we switched to, we had been off of closest resource dispatching and we switched back on it in January. We had been having some challenges with it. It was recommending the wrong resources throughout the county. So finally we turned it back on and now our data that's coming through our CAD program is not, it feels like it's double counting, triple counting. So I didn't want to provide you with bad data. So we're working with our FireStats LLC and also the software company to get accurate data. So hopefully we'll have that resolved next month. Couple things just on new development updates. If anyone saw the article in the Almanac over this last week, they've got a great article talking about what the general plans are for the USGS site. Also, I know the city of Menlo Park pushed out a notice just on an update on 80 Willow. And basically stand by. Just I think the relevant points on that, the next steps for the city was to continue to process the development application and respond to the applicant's assertions, follow CEQA governmental review requirements unless the application demonstrates it's exempt, and then keep the community informed of the project updates through the website. So still for us, a long way off before we ever see or touch any kind of plans, but that is still working its way through your system over there. Someday we will perhaps weigh in. Just thank you to everyone that attended our badge pinning, really well attended event on January 22nd here in Linden Day. We had an ALS JPA board meeting this month. I'm sure Director Solano will talk about that during his report. That was on January 21st. Interesting thing, the exercise event in Oakland, that was just, I have a friend who used to be the number 2 at CAL FIRE that invited me to this event in Oakland, and I brought Tom Owen along with me. The reason I attended is XPRIZE is something that's been founded to create innovation throughout a variety of different industries. And in this case, they are trying to create innovation in wildland fire suppression. And so they were hosting an event at the PG&E headquarters in Oakland on the 29th, and fascinating to go there and see. This was the 5 finalists who had been whittled down from 300 applicants, and their mission was to create an autonomous wildfire response drone, or drones, that can do a couple things. Within 10 minutes, their goal is in a 1,000 square kilometer section of Alaska, be able to detect a fire via satellite or whatever else they have, deploy these autonomous drones without any human intervention, and apply fire suppressants to it. And all 5 of these companies, they're from throughout the world, developed products, all of which were different. Some were these giant swarms of drones dropping individual spears. One was a ginormous drone that probably could lift 2 paramedics up, Director Christine, as we talked about. It had the capacity. And so they've got the final test is in June in Alaska to go and do exactly what they will. Light a number of small fires and fake fires, and the drones have to be able to distinguish real from fake and go and put them out. Interesting for us to see and witness the technology, and also, we've talked about drone technology here and what else we might be able to do with it, just besides our DFR program, about it being able to deliver some bigger payloads, like not a paramedic yet, maybe someday when it's safe, but AEDs and other things, right?
Yeah.
And so just connecting with people who did that. Interestingly enough, it was one of the finalists was a high school down in San Jose that had been working on this project for 3 years. So they actually made it to the finals. So really fascinating.
It's
impressive.
Drone is first responder, so
Oh.
our district has that program now.
Yeah, we've got a pilot program going right now where we launch drones. They're not autonomous. We've got a pilot remote. And it streams real-time images to our first responders as they're responding, so they can put their tablet in their engines, and it will show them what's happening on scene before they ever get there. So really pretty cool. And so anyway, that was an interesting thing that we did. Budget sessions have started our first one, the fire prevention, on February 5th, and we're hoping to finish up on February 23rd. So stay tuned on that. We'll be involving finance and then the entire board as we go through our budget process. Electrification of fire service vehicles. We're gonna give something a try that we kind of talked about at our last board meeting, like maybe, as Director Brinson said, we can just have a conversation. Yeah, and this is my first attempt at it. So I know this one's been hanging out on the list for like 8 or 9 months. And in your packet, I provided kind of some attachments so you can look and see at what's changed since the board, those members, at least 4 of you on the board, were considering an electric fire engine purchase back in 2021,
2019 and
Oh, there was that.
2020.
So
Yeah.
some has changed, in that at the time Rosenbauer was the only vendor. And now there are 3 vendors in the United States that are providing electric fire apparatus. 2 of them with E1 and Pierce, who we buy our equipment from, they actually are providing or manufacturing fire engines that look like what firefighters picture as fire engines versus what the Rosenbauer looked like. That one, but what's interesting, I will share with you as time has come on, they're slowly improving the process. I'm not sure it's quite ready for prime time. In that, all 3 of these now are really more than being a pure electric fire engine, are hybrids, right? Because they recognize pretty quickly that there needs to be some kind of backup generator on it, gas or diesel powered, that can provide some kind of augmented power if they have extended operations. So that's what you see in both, or all 3 cases here. I will say that the numbers, the initial surge to purchase these things was pretty fast and furious when they first were introduced. Rosenbauer was probably 2 or 3 years ahead of everybody else in the production of these. So, based on the information I have, just in the United States and Canada, Rosenbauer has approximately 8 to 10 of these engines deployed. E1, as far as I could research, only has 1 that's been actually delivered in Mesa, Arizona. And then the Pierce Volterra on the second page there are 5 agencies that have purchased those. And it seems like there's initial pushes to purchase them, and then it's kind of slowed down. The cost, just by comparison, for most of these is probably in the $2.1 million range. That does not include the infrastructure that's necessary for the charging. I know, I don't remember what the number was, but John Hitchcock was talking about the cost if we wanted to design engine 1 to be capable of charging. I think he was talking about somewhere in the range of between $800,000 and $1 million just for the infrastructure, for the charging capabilities there. So anyway, a regular fire engine these days is about $1.2 million. These are about 2.1. Chief, yes.
The equipment that goes into it, like, your backup equipment relative to each fire truck, what does that usually run?
So just to outfit it and everything? Ooh, I don't know. I would imagine if we were gonna replace all the equipment on there, it's probably $250,000. If you were gonna buy all new radios, SCBAs, replace all
So
those.
it's around 250, 300?
Sure,
Yeah, but the total off is probably 2.5 million after it's active.
sure.
Right.
For an electric engine
Yeah.
plus the infrastructure
Yeah.
requirements.
Well, not including.
Yeah. And then just some other things for conversation as we look at what are other opportunities for EVs in the fire district. As you are aware, right now, I have the only EV, the Mustang Mach-E, which, as much as I love it, it has its challenges with, any kind of need to charge it quickly is a challenge. So for emergency responses and stuff like that, I always have a certain amount of charging anxiety in the back of my head, knowing that if I need to respond, I need to have X number of charge on there in order to get to work and operate, because you can't swing by a gas station for like 3 minutes. And so it's a challenge in that respect. I think for us right now, like fleet wise, if we're exploring any opportunities, it would be in consideration of hybrid vehicles, right? So more efficient, a little bit cleaner, but still gives us with all of our light fleet the ability in an emergency to be able to go and operate on gas or diesel. So my current recommendation right now is I don't recommend purchasing of any more EVs at the moment. Hybrid is a consideration for future fleet. And then as far as the electric fire engines go, the one of the things I think we should just continue monitoring and wait and see if technology advances in ways that it makes sense. But it's interesting, we've seen it, I think as you read the news, there's been kind of a lull in the EV production in the market, you know, it was on its way up, and I don't know if it has to do with a change in the national administration and et cetera, but right now it's been noticeable. And, you know, if you look at Ford is taking a $5 billion loss on their EV manufacturing, and I don't know what's gonna happen with continued production on this electric fire engines, but there's not a big demand for them. That's quite.
And so Mark, I was just gonna note one thing in reading these are not really hybrid fire trucks.
No.
These are electric fire trucks that have either diesel or gas backup.
Yeah.
So it's almost like, you know, putting your Honda generator in the back of your Mach-E so that you can have power and you can charge while you're going. Yeah, and so I mean, I think that the conclusion of waiting for a more traditional hybrid is where, you know, the electric and gas switch basically through the computer and processor on the car, not a manual switch of, oh, I'm out of power now, let me switch. And so I think there's definitely been a big move towards hybrid and plug-in hybrids both, which give you that capability of kind of commingling and allows the processors on the rigs to actually create the optimal combination of electricity and gas or diesel, whichever the case may be. So I think in a way, we missed a cycle that was a good cycle to miss. And the future of it, which is if it gets to traditional hybrid, in traditional hybrid, you really never run out of power. It's no different than having a gas car, typically powered by a smaller gas engine. I was also just noting that on the battery capacity on like the Rosenbauer, 132 kilowatts, that's about equivalent to the high end of automobile batteries. Yet you're probably moving, what, a 30,000, 35,000 pound, John might know, kind of engine. So you're moving a tremendous amount of weight with not much more battery capacity than what's in a high-end car. And you can see that kind of evolving as Pierce and as E1 came out, they went with much bigger battery capacity, which then, by the way, adds that much more weight to it. So I don't know all the history of us not getting the one that was proposed, but in the end, I think we kind of missed the unfortunate part of the cycle. And I think we're premature to really consider it for the cycle of where they're going. I think the concept is there, but I don't think they're ready for prime time.
Yes, sir.
Just two questions about wording. Is range extender, does that mean a bigger battery or an extra battery? It was in the E1, first, the type. If you knew what range extender meant.
Well, I will say in here, the E1, let's see, it defines it as a pure electric vehicle, so I'm not sure.
But down in the specs, Mark, it says range extender engine available for extended operations. So to me, it's implying that there's kind of a secondary engine that kicks in.
A second engine or just a?
Probably a
battery?
diesel engine
Oh.
that's in it. It would be my guess from that comment.
And I just was curious if you know what the initials that are in your chart here, what ICE stands for? On the last page of it.
Of which, again, yes,
Oh.
exactly what it applies to. Well done. That was awesome.
He was the one that originally introduced me to that Mach.
And it's a Mustang.
Yeah. Yes.
Mark, have you had a chance to, get any kind of, response from, or opinions from those, parties that may have?
I haven't, but I'm really interested in doing that. I'll connect with some from each of the folks that have purchased the different engines.
Yeah.
I have some friends that work for LA City and San Diego, so I'm checking with them and then I'll reach out to the others. And purchase around what we want and, Pierce.
Yeah, it's like Tesla.
Feedback on how it's going.
Sizes
you can because one of the things that got me along those lines, thinking along those lines, is that they talk about urban versus the more suburban or rural kind of area in terms of different, one of these units will perform more designed for urban areas versus larger area like up in the mountains or things like that.
Any other comments? Hopefully that. Mark?
Yeah, I have one comment and one question. My comment is that if you're gonna look at electric vehicles, maybe it makes sense to do what other countries do, which is have smaller vehicles for like EMT visits, where you can have, smaller little vehicles that might be more appropriate for not that environment. We sent out a huge fire truck for somebody who's having a heart attack. I don't know how much the water capacity of truck matters in that case. But that's a totally different conversation. The question I have is, I had a meeting with somebody who's followed, it was a 965 weeks, and they mentioned that there have been a lot of smoke detector issues. They've done repeated calls, like, oh, there's an alert, 965 weeks says a fire alarm around that. I don't know, you probably don't have the answers off the top of your head, but I'll leave your comments. And apparently, what she was saying is there was a lot of smoking, triggering fire alarms that were getting evacuated at about 3 in the morning. And the firemen were quite angry about this happening again and again and again. I don't know if you have any information on that or whether, connect with me after.
I'll look into it and let you know what the issue was or situation.
Yeah, that's
share the same thing with the board.
Yeah, it's something like 15 calls in January. One building.
Whoa.
Yeah.
How old's the building?
6 months.
Only 6 months?
Literally 6 months. Put up for
I said I would follow up with you 2 weeks ago to her.
Yeah,
Yeah, I didn't, so I'm doing
I got it. Got it.
Thanks.
We'll get you an answer.
Can I ask another question about the fire?
Sure.
Were you gonna say anything about incidents?
Oh, yeah, I'm not quite done.
Okay, then I'll wait.
If you have a question about incidents, happy to answer.
Sorry, I thought you were done. Sorry, Mark. I missed the incident.
First, behind it, and we appreciate this of our California Task Force 3 Foundation, thing that's coming up Saturday, February 28th. 5 to 9 at the warehouse. Box 220. Currently 120. Cool. Awesome. And more there, so come join us.
Full of people, so anyway.
Good.
That's good. And then I just also, before I'm done, go to Director Bernstein's question about the incident. I wanted to mention in item 5, that's part of the consent. If you hadn't noticed, there's a new attachment E that we shared with the Finance Committee. A number of years ago, before I was chief there, when Chief Schaefer was, I think, sitting in the interim role, a question had come up, or a comment from Director Bernstein about us including travel in engine contracts and wanting to make sure we excluded it. And then during that conversation, there had also been a request by the board as a whole for us to provide information biannually on our travel, training, and conference expenditures. That after that, nothing ever happened. So we became aware of that, and now that document that is in there, it's like your last 3 pages, starting on page 616. So I just wanted to point that out, being transparent, it's on consent. If there's any feedback or anything related to that, we can change, tweak the report, but I just wanted to make sure everyone was aware of that. So we're not trying to just slip it in here.
I didn't see that on the consent calendar, I'm sorry.
It's in the back of the treasurer's
It's
report.
back at the treasurer's, I was wondering what
Yeah.
that was.
So the plan,
Attachment E.
yeah, the plan for us is every 6 months. we'll include that in the treasurer's report, and if the board has any feedback, please.
616.
616.
It looks like this.
Yeah, I looked at it, I wondered what it was.
Or if you have questions when we get to the consent calendar, you can certainly ask the whole step. With that, not to get us off track, which I just feel. Director Bernstein, you had some questions on incidents?
Yeah, were you gonna mention any, or?
I didn't have any, to report.
I had a question about one incident that I read about in the paper, and that was, there was a house fire in Redwood City where a woman died.
Oh, that's the one I actually emailed you about, and then realized that wasn't actually our jurisdiction.
Right,
Yeah,
but we sent 2 engines.
we were actually the first
The first,
engines there
yeah.
because the primary engine for Redwood City that normally would respond in there, I don't remember if it was engine 9 or 11, was already on another call. So, engine, I remember it was 3 and 5. Our engines were the first 2 engines on scene.
5.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think you're right. And
Well-
so,
It troubled me, I mean, one, I don't like this mutual aid thing anyway. But it bothered me that we're waking up our firefighters at 4 in the morning or whatever time it was. To go to this fire in Redwood City, and I'm thinking, Redwood City has fire engines, why aren't they sending them? And I just wondered,
and they did, they sent a bunch, and
but we were incident command through the whole.
no, once the battalion chief got there, Chief Bolton took over incident command.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but initially, the first in engine captain has the responsibility either to take command or pass it to the second engine, so somebody's in command. And all I can say is, I mean, this is especially the reason why we should keep doing auto aid or mutual aid. Because seconds count in a fire like that. Unfortunately, the woman passed away in the garage, but if Redwood City's delayed and we're the first ones in and we can actually go in and save a life because we're the closest next engine, that's wonderful. That's what we want to do with all of our neighbors. And because someday that's going to benefit us, like it did at 2700 Middlefield, and someday it's going to benefit Redwood City or Woodside, or hopefully someday even Palo Alto once we can figure that out. But that's what makes the system work, is that when we drop our boundaries, and it should be kind of a fair trade, right? So no individual agencies overly burdened with somebody else's call, but it should be a fair trade, and it's really good what's best for the communities, regardless of whatever jurisdictional
Yeah,
boundaries.
I mean, I was here when they ground out that station or closed that station, and so we were doing all the
That's
responses
not
to it,
fair.
and
Yeah.
that wasn't fair.
Yeah.
But do you know firsthand, or are you just hypothesizing that the engine, the nearest engine there was otherwise occupied?
I know they were on the call.
Okay.
So ours was closest, and then we were first and maybe second, or first and maybe third.
No, we were first and second according to the newspaper.
Okay, yeah. We've got engines just like they do, close to the borders.
Yeah, it just troubled me that a major fire, we end up kind of waking up two groups of firefighters and so forth, and leaving that whole north end
Well, we,
essentially uncovered.
yeah, we move our things around, and again,
That wakes up all those other people then too.
had it been in our jurisdiction, just a block away, Redwood City would have been doing the same thing for us, and leaving their,
And they
Their
did
parts
for
and
the-
protect-
Well, I think that's
the
the,
Middlefield Road fire, they were there, weren't they
Yeah.
there first, or just didn't, Jeff?
Middlefield Road,
Yeah.
Jeff Alton was the first
First
DC,
one,
our guys were the
yeah.
first engine there, but
Yeah.
it could have been done just as easily,
Yeah.
yeah.
I think it raises the question, Chuck, is would you be troubled if engine 3 was on a call and Redwood City responded into Atherton for a fire? And it woke up their firefighters in the middle of the night because they were the closest engine? It's kind of a what goes around comes around. And I don't think we should lose sight of it's a mutual aid system, which has mutual benefit to the community members.
When the city wanted to save money and they closed the station.
But that's historical. That's back then. That wasn't the case in this call even.
Well, that's why I wanted to ask about it.
And if that ever happened where a city was browning out or doing something like that, that's part of the challenge we have with the city of Palo Alto right now, is they haven't fully staffed up all of their stations. And so they're still trying to fully staff their stuff. But if Redwood City did that, we'd be having conversations with them, so the burden would be falling.
But they probably have with the county also, when we respond to their calls.
Will be.
Sure.
Yeah,
That's still, an issue. It's small,
Issue.
but it's an issue.
okay, thank you.
Anything else for the chief? Questions, comments? Thanks, Mark, there is, public hearing being here. There are two parts to the public hearing area, this item, but the first part is the public hearing of an ordinance for the city of Menlo Park and adopted by reference the 2024 International Fire Code with 2025 California amendments and local requirements. So I will open it up to the public hearing now. I don't see anyone in here, but is there anyone online, Michelle? There's not. Okay, then, for public comment, I'm assuming there's nothing. So I'll close the public comment and public hearing, and we'll go to item 3, which is to adopt the ordinance in the city of Menlo Park and adopt by reference the 2024 International Fire Code with 2025 California amendments and local requirements, hereafter known as the 2025 California Fire Code and local amendments. So, I know Dave is he online or do you want to jump?
I will handle it if there's any questions that really, I can answer this right now. Yeah, we talked about it last meeting. We actually went, this is the second time we're going through it because Menlo Park decided they want to adopt our ordinance, which is great. So with that, I will ask the board to accept the report and have holding public hearing adopt the ordinance. Unless there are Chief Stacey's line.
Well, I entertain a motion to adopt the ordinance in the discussion, and we can add that, if there is, does anyone want to make a motion to adopt the ordinance for the city of Menlo Park?
Moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, moved by Director Bernstein, seconded by Director Jones. Any comments or questions for Chief Schweiss?
I just have one quick
Okay,
question.
Chuck.
That still doesn't make the Menlo Park ordinance the same as the other ones because of the fire sprinklers, is that correct?
Each line, you there, phone friend?
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
And what was your question again, Director?
I was asking if there's still a difference between Menlo Park and the other agencies with respect to fire sprinklers.
Yes, there still is. The Menlo Park still has a 75% remodel
Okay.
for only residentials. All commercial and other TIs or tenant improvements are still 50% like everybody else.
Okay, thank you.
So
Of
the
course.
only difference is in residential, right? Okay.
Only for residential
Okay.
houses.
Okay, any other questions?
Okay, roll call please.
Director Bernstein?
Aye.
Director Bloom?
Aye.
Director Jones?
Aye.
Director Solano?
Aye.
Director Crawley?
Aye, so the motion carries. We'll move on to the consent calendar. Does anyone want to remove anything from the consent calendar?
I'd like to approve the minutes.
Okay, so that is, item 4, right?
Correct.
Okay, any others? Then is there a motion to approve the consent calendar minus item 4, the minutes?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Director Solano, seconded by Director Jones to approve the consent calendar, items 5 through 8. Any comment? Roll call please, Michelle.
Director Bernstein?
Aye.
Director Bloom?
Aye.
Director Jones?
Aye.
Director Crawley?
Aye. That motion. You have a correction?
Yeah, so I noticed in the minutes that we're including attachment A, which is Director Bernstein's letter to the board. And I just think the minutes should reflect two things. One is that letter was not provided in advance of the discussion. It was thrown at us during the meeting. And secondly, I think if we're going to include the letter, we should also include the opinions of the other board members as to the accuracy of that letter. And that's not included.
Okay, so, do you want to offer an
I can offer an amendment if you'd like.
Yes, yeah. that's-
So an amendment that essentially says the minutes to reflect that the majority of the board did not agree with Director Bernstein's comments in his attached letter, and the letter was not provided in advance of the meeting.
Any other comments? Yeah, I kind of agree that from the, not getting this, the letter. That we, I didn't even get it. You just got it. If you want to make a motion to approve item for the minutes of hearing, hearing.
I move we approve the minutes with the change that I just suggested.
Okay, is there a second?
Make it.
Okay, so moved by Director Bourne and seconded by Director Jones. Any comments from board? Okay, roll call please, Michelle.
Director Bernstein?
Aye.
Director Bloom?
Aye.
Director Jones?
Aye.
Director Solano?
Aye.
Director Crowley?
Aye, so that motion carries, and we'll go to item 9, which is the regular agenda, which is item 9. Resolution increasing the fire station 77 in shop. HVAC just under 25 for the state improvements by 30,000.
What page?
Page 630.
So I don't know if you were laying out. Do you want to pick it up or?
I'll tee it up and then hand it over to Francine.
Okay, please.
We can cover this. I just want to be clear, what we're asking for the board today is for the increase in our budget by $37,000. We don't need approval of awarding the contract to the lowest responsible bidder because it falls below the $100,000 threshold. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Francine to share what we're asking.
Yes, so this is for the CIP project that we originally came to the board for, and John had costed it out based on the response he received from a contractor on an estimated cost, and due to kind of increase in cost, he opened up for bid. He received 9 bids, and they were all considerably over the amount that we had came to the board for. So this is just asking for an increase. He would rather do this and have to go back out and open up for bid because he still doesn't think we'll get in within the range that we originally had approved for. So this is just asking for the increase, which would put the total project to no more than $92,000 for the HVAC. And what this is for is that there's currently no cooling unit in the mechanic shop. During the summer when they're working on vehicles, it gets very hot in there, and the plan is to put an HVAC system so there's cooling in the mechanic shop that makes it comfortable.
Okay, to start the discussion, is there a motion to adopt this resolution increasing the budget for the HVAC, unit for the mechanic shop by 37,000?
I move that we adopt the resolution increasing the budget by $37,000.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, moved by Director Bloom, seconded by Vice President Solano. So any discussion or question?
I got a question.
Yeah, Robert, and Chuck.
Wait,
No, Robert.
Robert.
It's just a curiosity for the most part, in the discussion part of the agenda item. The question is the type of, this is the add-on after the budget was approved for this particular renovation over Station 77. The question is, in developing the architectural changes for that particular facility, I'm curious as to why this wasn't a part of the original assessment of what really needed to go into the changes at that particular site. Was it part of a architectural omission? Or was this the first time that it got hot and people realized that they needed an air conditioning system? I'm just kind of, I'm not trying to be funny, but I'm just trying to understand how
This became
all
an issue.
this thing became, went through architectural design, someone looking in terms of cost, and then it got approved by the city. And then all of a sudden, people decide, hey, it's too hot, we need an air conditioning system. I'm just trying to understand the thought process that went on and now coming back to say that, hey, we missed something and we need to include it. And I know that happened in project design, things happen. But it's oftentimes, things that were taught in architectural drawings that sometimes, wasn't really factored out completely. I'm just kind of curious as to.
Yeah, so it's actually, maybe I missaid, but it's not the station, but it's the station's mechanic shop, which is in the back, and it's kind of like a warehouse building. And I think when that was originally developed, there was never any air conditioning in this big, thinking maybe it'd be just a place for vehicles to be parked or something. But now we have 3 mechanics, including one which is a supervisor, that are working in there. And it's just, I think it's uncomfortable conditions, so they were asking to add like an HVAC system to get, and also there's lots of fumes and things when they're working on vehicles, so just to get some circulation and some air, especially on the hot days. So I don't know about the original plans when that mechanic shop was constructed, but this was a plan to make this change during this fiscal budget, and then it was just the price was off. I think John had mentioned that the original quote also didn't include electrical work, and there was also an addition of another unit that they said would be needed based on the size of the mechanic shop. And I think those things combined with maybe increasing costs for supplies made the price a lot higher. And as it is, we're going, John would be going with the lowest responsive bidder, but that company is still considerably higher than the initial estimate.
I'm not questioning the cost for the work. Pretty much kind of trying to get a handle on the process. Was this a kind of the thought process of did thinking ever taking into consideration where these guys are gonna be working? Was that their work designated to a certain location and all of a sudden, hey, somebody's still working back there, and so now that particular part of the building now becomes a place where mechanics go to work. Because I think in terms of development, in terms of, that's probably because it's gonna come out wrong, but I'm trying to understand the process of how things are developed, looked at, and how they arrive at we have finished this process of developing our architectural schemes based upon information that had been given to us. And so we're finished with that process, and now we're gonna move on to funding that which was talked about.
I think I could probably shed some light on the process. And so what it is, it wasn't so much as the design process as it was an imperfect budget process. So we developed the budget for this specific item. It wasn't in hindsight. We actually did determine we needed HVAC in there. And during the 25-26 budget preparation, when we did the CIP budget, John connected with an HVAC contractor, and he walked through the project and gave us what he thought was a reasonable estimate for what it would take to install a system in here. As you can see, he originally thought 2 cooling units would be enough. When the actual design was drawn out, it revealed that what his estimate had been that we prepared the budget on for our CIP budget was not accurate. So that's where the thing is. So it wasn't that an architect designed something and we got a bad estimate or something like that. It was during our overall CIP budget process like that we're doing right now, trying to project what we think the budget cost should be. It didn't meet what the bid cost ended up. So different than Station 1 project, because we got a very thorough process for costing it out and doing all these things on the multi-million-dollar project. But that's, I think, where we fell short was just in us trying to develop an accurate estimate a year ago, just by eyeballing the project and getting a contractor out there to give us his best guess on what it would cost.
It sounds like, Mark, we did not have a mechanical engineer size the AC system. We relied on vendor input, the supplier input to size it, which isn't completely unusual for kind of an add-on AC system. But the only way to really have a truly accurate, kind of design would be to have had the expense of a mechanical engineer come in, size the AC capacity, make a recommendation on it. It sounds like we didn't do it that way. We just used supplier recommendations. And the initial supplier recommendation at 2 was inadequate. It needed 3.
John wrote me and he says you're correct.
Okay.
He also just said, for some historical, that the shop was built in the 90s.
Yeah.
And it should have had HVAC at the time, original construction, but for some reason it didn't. And I don't know what time we took over that shop, but basically the mechanics went without their conditions.
That predates John.
Does that answer your question, Robert?
Yeah, I knew the answer, but I just wanted to.
So
Make us squirm over.
well, the process that was, I mean, I don't know if it's a I look at it both ways. On one hand, it's a missed process because we didn't have a mechanical engineer design a proper AC system. The flip side of it is very often when you're adding an AC system to a building, you don't go to the expense and you just rely on the vendors that are going to supply the units to tell you it's about this much square footage and this is the capacity and here you go.
And a lot of times, in most cases, my experience has been, when you go that route, generally with a vendor for HV, they have those technicians.
Yeah, they do the calcs, but it's different than what wasn't done here was a full design phase with drawings and capacity and everything else.
Okay, Chuck.
I was just curious if the HVAC maintenance contractor who gave the estimate, is that one of the bidders on the project?
You know what, I don't know. I mean, that's John.
But I have the same skepticism that Robert has on this. So the other thing that, I mean, it's hard to imagine that 3 people need 3 air conditioners, like their personal air conditioners, and it costs $100,000 for 3 air conditioners. I'm gonna vote for this because I want the mechanics to be comfortable and so forth. But this, I think what we really need, I've been asking for it for maybe 2 or 3 years, we really need a professional facilities manager to be able to assess these things and know what we need to do to get this kind of mechanical equipment. The other question I have though is, are we gonna be able to close the shop so that, I mean, before the shop was too short, so the equipment would stick out and you couldn't close the doors on it, so it wasn't possible to air condition it.
That's part of our improvement project, is we're building the bay so it's long enough to accommodate and enclose a full ladder track.
And so when we air condition it, we won't be sending the air conditioning out into the atmosphere.
Yes.
Okay, good.
This to me does not seem like an unreasonable amount of money for a building of that size.
Yeah, it's less than $100,000.
Yeah, it's like, I think we can make lots of assumptions of what could have and would have and should have happened. But this from a scale perspective, this is a small project of which you would normally size through the vendors, just like John did. I don't think this has anything to do with capability of our staff.
Okay, so we have
John has had just to actually respond to Director Bernstein's 2 questions, if you'd like me to.
Sure.
Yeah, so he just asked if the person that gave the quote was a bidder, and John said he was, but he was disqualified, his submittal wasn't complete. And then regarding hiring the mechanical engineer, John says you need a budget first, so it's like a chicken and egg, we have to get the approval, but we don't know how much to get the approval for, but we can't hire the engineer until we get the approval. So that's kind of how that works.
Well, is that really, can't the chief just hire someone for $5,000 or something to size the thing and figure out the square footage and the flow per minute or whatever it is?
The board approves all CIP projects, so the chief wouldn't be able to,
Even though it's under the threshold.
And mechanical engineers don't really work that way. Because they're going to want to do calculations with drawings, and they're going to provide their license and signature with it that validates it's adequate and accept the liability at the end of the project. So they're gonna want to do a full HVAC design, ductwork design. This project, I suspect if we had gone that approach, we'd be talking about a number twice as big for this project versus meeting the basic AC needs of the mechanics.
And again, also understand during budget development, we're not usually spending money to create a CIP budget for something like this. I mean, we get, John's got the ability to get some reasonable estimates to develop the budget. But then once we put it out to bid, it may come up, maybe over or under budget, and ultimately it comes before the board for approval of that, the bigger contract. There you go.
Any other questions? We have a motion and a second, so the roll call please. Director Bernstein?
Aye.
Director Bloom?
Aye.
Director Jones?
Aye.
Director Solano? Director Crawley? Aye. So that motion carries, and we'll move on to item 10, which is to accept the fiscal year 2025-26 year fiscal report.
As reviews by the finance committee.
Yes.
Good evening, everyone. So as Director Bloom mentioned, this was actually reviewed and discussed thoroughly in the finance committee meeting 2 weeks ago. So I probably won't go over each of the we can probably just go over the general overview for each of the general fund that we have here, the current status, the amount of the fund balance. So just a little bit for refresher, the mid-year fiscal report, this summarizes the transactions and activities for the district. Of the district as of December 31, 2025. This report also presents the year-end numbers based on the projections and then current information that we have at the time of the report production. This will just kind of give the board an idea of how we are currently spending and if we're actually operating within our budget, if there's a need to actually adjust our budget based on the trends and the projected spending for the rest of the year. So if you would turn on page 635, which is on page 3 of the report. So on the first table, this is the current status of fund balance as of December 31, 2025. So the district recorded about $48.4 million in revenues and $36.9 million in expenditures, leading to an overall fund balance of $172.2 million. This is like an 11.5 increase from last year's fiscal year ending fund balance. The second table on the same page, that's the projection. So again, based on the current information that we have, we're expecting to have at least $100.5 million in revenues, $83 million in expenses, and that would result into $179.2 million fund balance across all major funds. And that's a $17.4 million increase for the overall, $17.4 million increase over the beginning fund balance. And then if you turn on the next page, which is on page 636. So this is the general fund. Again, I will just really go over, have a general overview of each of the major fund. But of course, if there's questions, be open for that at the end of the presentation. So for page 4 of the report, which is again page 636. So for the general fund, currently we have about $47.7 million in revenues, $33.9 million in expenditures, and $9.2 million in transfers to the CIP fund. So that's about $4.5 million in savings as of December 2025. And based on this, it's projected to have about $6.3 million savings at the end of the fiscal year, and that's because we're also using some of the reserves for some of the encumbrances and prepaid assets that we had for fiscal year 25-26. That's why the number is a little bit different. Then the next one is for CIP, which is on page 645. So 645, that's page 13 of the report. So this one, summarizes transactions and balances of the CIP fund. So as of December, the district, has incurred expenses of $2 million for various fire station projects and purchase of capital assets. So talking to John, for the rest of the fiscal year, we are actually anticipating that all of our current or ongoing projects will be completed, except of course the Station 1 rebuild and the project that we just talked about, which is, the Station 77 shop office HVAC. But the rest, of the projects that, we've budgeted for this fiscal year, those are all estimated to be completed by the end of, by June 30, 2026. And right now, the fund balance is expected to be about $151.1 million at the end of the fiscal year. And this is excluding any potential general fund, reserve transfer, which we actually do an analysis at the end of the fiscal year once we, finalize all the numbers. So potentially, I am probably like 99% sure that, we're probably gonna have more than $151.1 million projected, amount for the CIP. And that gives us, a good, buffer or, leeway for our current biggest project, which is the Station 1 rebuild design, which is about $121 million. And then lastly, not lastly, for the special revenue fund, which is on page 647. So that table, as you can see, there is still a negative, fund balance, which is about $346,000. So a bulk of it really is, just timing difference between the drawdowns, where we receive the money and then where we spend it. So once we reach a year end, we're probably gonna receive all of it within 60 days, and the fund balance is gonna be zero. If we receive like everything within 60 days after the fiscal year end. And I also just want to mention that about $130,000 are still yet to be collected. Those are the FEMA outstanding claims. And talking to the user team, we are still expecting to collect the full $130,000. We just don't know when. They've been pretty good the past year or so in actually giving us the funds. We received like $20,000 so far out of the $150K outstanding as of the beginning of the year. But right now it's still at $130,000 that we haven't collected. And there's a government shutdown right now, partial government shutdown, so we don't know when it's gonna open again. So that actually contribute probably partially, to the receipt of the funds being delayed. And I mentioned this to the finance committee meeting, to the finance committee members as well. I think it's worth mentioning to the board. This does not include the recent, Washington flood deployments. So that actually happened in December. But what the good news is, we started this last year. We are now submitting a claim about roughly 75% of the total expenditure. I think our user team submitted about $1.1 million on January 22nd. That's again roughly estimated 75% of the total claim. We haven't received it yet. If we're using last year as a comparison as a benchmark, I think we are probably going to receive it soon. But again, with the government shutdown, we probably won't get it, probably in the next few weeks. So we'll keep, everyone at the board and the finance team will be updated once we receive that 75%, advance. And I think that's, once we receive it, it's good news for us, so we don't have to wait for several months to, receive, the actual, for the full claim amount. And again, this is, a process that our user team and then us, finance, is going to be moving forward. So us to take advantage as well. We're losing pretty much opportunity cost for investments for the rest if we don't receive it on time. So this is a good procedure to do every time there's a huge event. And then lastly, on page 648 of the report, that's the last page, page 15 of the report. This is pretty much the fund balance, as of December and then the projected amount. And I just wanted to point out that I think the last sentence on the first paragraph, there is an error on that. It says that, the projected overall fund balance is 154.6 million, but it's actually $179.2 million dollars. So apologies for that. That's an error and that should be corrected. But overall, the district is, operating within the budget and we're not expected to make any adjustments or changes, to the budget for the rest of it. And that's it for the media fiscal report, and we're now open to questions.
Okay, any questions? Done?
I had a couple on page 640. I'm just curious what this means, or if you have any observations on it. You have a variety of 5 different items here in this chart. Licenses and permits show a substantial increase. Is there something going on that's creating that?
So last year, typically, I think for the past 5-6 years, our licenses and permits revenue is typically between $1 million to $1.2 million. But last year there is a significant decrease, because again, there was a slowdown, of course, with inspections, and then there isn't really much, and it's mostly for the commercial inspections. There's not really much, but it picked up, I would say, this fiscal year. So even though we only budgeted about $881,000, because we thought during the budget process the trend is going to continue, but this kind of surprised us as well, pleasantly, because it's additional revenue for us. So again, those inspections, those activities, for licenses and permits, I think just gradually increase during the past 6-7 months. So that's why right now on average this is what we're expecting. Although again we still have 5 months for the rest of the fiscal year. It may slow down again, it might still be the same, we don't know yet, but this is the average amount that we thought it would be at the end of the fiscal year based on the current information that we have.
And then the other one I wanted to ask you about, the intergovernmental is quite a bit higher. Again, does that mean something? Is there some new trend?
It's not, because this one is a little tricky, because intergovernmental, it's really mostly for deployments. So for CalOES deployments. So for accounting purposes, if we actually don't receive the funds within 60 days after the fiscal year end, it's not considered a revenue, it's considered unearned, so it's a liability as of June 30. So the increase on this one is partly due to 2 things. First, we can't really predict, how many deployments do we have per year. So that's why when we did the budget process, it's mostly, we're trying to do an average of what we've gotten, for the past 5 years. And then the second is, those items that we have not collected in the past year. So now we collected it, and now we're recognizing it as revenue. So those 2 things, prior year catch up from the deployment claims that we haven't received, plus the uncertainty in the deployments during the years, what's causing ups and downs between this in this category. And it just so happened that this year it's an increase. There's I think about, I would say about 800, 900, or more than $1 million, that we actually haven't received last fiscal year, particularly with the Palisades deployment. We that happened January, February, but we actually only received it this fiscal year. So that's why there's a huge difference of variance.
And then I have just a technical question about the intergovernmental. Is there an accounting reason, or I'm just curious why the state reimbursements are in other operating revenue, but the federal reimbursements are in the special revenue fund?
Oh, so it's not really, an accounting, it's not really, it's more of a choice, I would say. Because, for special revenue fund, we'd like to keep it separate. because, that's where we actually have those grants that we have, which is in the cooperative agreements, which is, FEMA funded, and anything federal, related. We usually, put it, under, that fund. It's because, it's substantial enough. Plus, we do have a separate audit for, any federal funds. So if we receive about, before it was $750,000, now it's about, it's $1 million if we spend about like $750 or $1 million, depending on when the grant was, received. We are subject to a single audit. So that's a whole completely, different, audit than, the financial audit that, we just completed. That one is just actually just completed 2 weeks ago. So that's, also part of the reason why we wanted to keep it separate.
So, but let me understand then, I mean, I do understand that, and that makes sense. In the special revenue fund where the federal payments are, is that all that's in that intergovernmental fund, is just those federal payments?
Oh, intergovernmental for the general fund or the special revenue fund?
For the special revenue fund?
Special revenue fund is all federal.
All federal,
All
it's
federal.
100%.
100%.
Okay, but in the one that's into other operating revenue, that's state plus some other things, is that right?
Yeah, it's mostly state, yes.
Okay, and we don't have to have a special audit for state?
We do not. Unless it's, gonna be a pass-through from the federal, then we might. But again, that's, not the case on this one.
Okay.
It's also worth noting that on the special revenue fund, intergovernmental reimbursement is just one piece of it, because we have the operating expenses. We have wages, we have benefits, we have operational expenses. So tracking that as an independent thing makes a whole lot more sense. It's almost like a standalone unit that we're reimbursed for. On the intergovernmental, that's response-based. We respond mutual aid on a state response. OES reimburses us, but we're actually not submitting invoices for wages, benefits, facilities, trucks, insurance, everything else.
That's
Which-
very, very
Which one are we
specific to
not,
OES.
which one are we not submitting expenses for?
On the Cal OES. Cal OES is just
Intergovernmental.
based on a reimbursement schedule.
Right,
Oh, I
that's the
see what you're saying.
intergovernmental.
Yeah,
Okay,
so for CalOES, how we don't really submit actual expenses. So for CFAA, there's a rate, a schedule, like salary schedule that we follow, average, of all for each
Right.
classification. But for this one, Dr. Bloom is right. Even if it's part of the cooperative agreement, what we submit is actual hours, for time, actual salaries, if there's like overtime, right, all of those operating expenses that are used within this, are incurred.
thank you very much, I just wanted to understand how that worked.
Any other comments? Oh,
And just, I'm sorry, I have a last question. Why is it that we might be receiving the Washington flood monies earlier than the other monies that the feds owe us?
It's because we submitted, I think, the process, and we started it this last year, we can actually submit a 75%, advance claim, for estimated 75%, for FEMA deployments. So that is actually, why we might actually receive it, earlier than the other funds. And same thing happened last year as well with our Milton deployment. So for Milton deployment, we also submitted, a 75% claim, and we actually received it, about 2-3 weeks or about after we
Pretty
pretty fast after we submitted it. And again, this is something that we will be doing, going forward. Because it benefits us, we don't have to front the money and then wait for several months to actually receive majority of the claim. So again, that's why we're receiving it, because we submitted 75% advance.
I see, okay, thank you.
any other comments?
I move we accept the fiscal year 25-26 mid-year fiscal report.
There's a second? And moved by Director Lynch, seconded by Director Jones. Roll call, please, Michelle.
Director Bernstein?
Aye.
Director Bloom?
Aye.
Director Jones?
Aye.
Director Solano?
Aye.
Director Curley?
Aye. Okay, moving on to the last regular agenda item 11, which is
moving the April meeting from the 21st to April 14th. Michelle, do you want to say good? I can about it, because I'm gonna, I mean, usually our meetings are like in the teens. Our what? Our meetings are usually around the April, I'm gonna be out of town also April 21st. So I was gonna see if we could move our meetings to April 14th from the 21st. Okay, anyone, I'll make a motion to move the meeting from April 21st or April 21st to the 14th.
I'll second it.
Okay, any discussion?
Can I just ask a question? Do you have time to get out everything and so forth in that compressed schedule?
It's tight, but I'll have to make it work. It's fine.
Well, we've done this
Yeah.
before too,
We
right,
have.
so, yeah. Okay, so, moved by Director Bloom and seconded by.
No, moved by you, seconded
Oh,
by
by
me.
you, sorry, okay. Roll call, please.
Director Bernstein?
Aye.
Director Bloom?
Aye.
Director Jones?
I'll vote on it, but I probably won't be at that meeting.
Oh,
Oh, you know.
That's okay. That's all right. You go for it. So I, just tell me what I'm not gonna.
A qualified aye.
Director Sloan?
I,
Director Paul?
Oh my God, so the motion carries. Item 12, proposed.
I want to make a comment. I just, it seems, I mean, I'd like to accommodate our board members, and if Virginia can't make it, I think that makes sense, but I think Robert ought to be able to make the meeting, so if we can't do it on the 14th, then we ought to find a date that works for everybody.
well, no, I think, I'll see what I can do, but I'm scheduled to be somewhere else that day. I plan over there, but what I'm saying is that I maybe there's some tweaking I can do with where I'm going and where,
Well, we could do it on April 15th.
That's what I was saying, maybe the Wednesday or Thursday.
I appreciate your consideration, but I'm just one person. And
But she's just one person.
But I'm trying to say that I might be able to make some accommodation wherever I am to call back in.
Okay. Worst
Well,
case scenario, if you can't, then we can always put it on the agenda next month. Okay. Proposed agenda items. We have one from Director Solano, which is to discuss public work responsibilities involving particular and emergency incident situations. So would we like to put this on a future agenda?
My only question is, could this be covered in a chief's report? Yeah, just the chief updating the board on the policy regarding this. I think it started about the tree incident on Bay Road.
Yeah, do you want to talk about? I mean, you talked
I
about.
don't think there is any agreement except Office of Emergency Services dispatches our fire district when it involves tree down. I mean, is that
If somebody dials 911, we go.
yeah,
Right? If it's a tree down, if it's just a cable wire down, that's not a hazard, we go to, okay.
But the rationale of dispatch, I mean, is pretty simple, is that it's unknown whether wires are involved. Often people say no wires are involved and then there's wires down with it. So it's a public safety issue, which is why they're doing it. I think your question I thought was more around where does the responsibility for the remediation happen?
well, you make a good point, relative, there's a wire down. Public safety unit, either police or fire, are gonna show up. Now, who removes the tree? Well, in this case, our fire agency removed the tree from the roadway. Now,
As a courtesy, they're not obligated to remove the
no,
tree.
but I'm just, that could have been a situation where maybe their truck being out of service, and maybe it could have been used for a life and death situation somewhere else, when they could have had a public works truck removing the tree.
But this is why my suggestion was the chief covering the report, because it's my understanding at least that when they're doing that kind of work, they are available for service. They don't stay out of service once it's determined whether there's an emergency or not an emergency associated with the tree.
You're saying that the fire truck stays in service?
They go back in service
cutting
if there's
trees
no
up?
wire. Yeah,
They should be, now, I don't know the details on this one, but my expectation would be if they're gonna just do a good deed and relieve the Public Works Department in the city of Menlo Park, that the captain would monitor the radio while the guys are sawing, and if they get a call, that they would go available on scene. They get a call, they go to the call and leave the tree in whatever shape it's in.
I have been on this exact response where fire in the middle of removing a tree
Yeah.
up on Highway 35 said, we have a medical call, we're leaving.
Again,
And we
that's-
put flares back out and closed the road.
That's my expectation. I'm not saying that's what happened.
No,
Wow.
Whoa. You got it this time.
that was not my bad.
That's because you, okay, I can say lots of things.
That was not my bad.
You got it now, Rob.
So,
No,
from his.
we can handle it as the chief's report, but let's get through county dispatch and through whatever the cities and towns that we deal with relative to it, with those types of situations. Now, I don't think, because I was on the scene with that, I think it was Engine 5, and they were cutting the tree up and putting it into small little pieces and moving it over to the side, and I don't know if they were out of service or in service. But it's be hard for them to respond if they're chopping trees up and trying to get into a fire truck. I mean,
It's not, you turn off the chainsaws, you put them in the truck and you leave.
So so my question is, if we put it on the agenda, what do you want to accomplish? Like, do you want, or do you think that we should have an agreement with the cities for?
well, it could be handled, like Harry said, in the chief's report to get a verification from the city of Middle Park.
And what happened, what do they do?
What's their responsibility? Two, I know the city, town of Atherton, they don't have people on the weekends that work.
They do,
Public Works,
they get called in.
I thought they were contract.
No. Public Works employees. They come in Atherton trucks, I've seen them on weekends, removing trees and doing other storm related work.
Well, maybe that's.
They may be contractors, but they're
Maybe
available
that's what
on
we have
call.
to deal with then, with the town of Atherton, at least there's some type of an agreement here. I just think they're
Menlo
just
Park's the
shooting
same.
from the hip. I think
Well,
we
why
need
don't
to
we
get stuff.
see, if you
We get
want
the
to put it
facts.
in the chief's report on what exactly happened, if we need to put something on the agenda to do any
Well, the
agreement
chief
or
can,
whatever,
the
then
chief can find out
first.
through the city manager, what's the protocol relative to these type of instances where it should be a public works unit that should be doing it instead of our fire department.
Okay, so then you're okay with having the chief
I will
do an
follow up
update?
and get the details on that specific.
And then put it in your report next month.
And we can figure out if we need to agendize something.
Exactly.
Okay,
No,
perfect.
that's fine.
Okay, so we've got that taken care of. Item 13, you proposed agenda items, anyone have any? Chuck?
Yeah, I was gonna propose something, again, I think it could be a chief's report probably, but this pertains to technology, and I know we're working on this drone stuff, and there are some opportunities with drones to do some things. But I noticed just in the last month, two things happening. One is that Tesla is repurposing its auto assembly plant over in the East Bay, wherever it is, Hayward or whatever, to become a robot assembly plant. And Apple has some big top secret new technology that they've been working on. It's starting to leak a little bit. And the leaks are that it's a robotic, some sort of robotic machine also. And I'd like, if you could make some discreet, or maybe not so discreet, inquiries to some of these companies and ask them about the possibility of using some sort of robotic device to deal with either hazardous materials spills or with really hazardous fires, and sending them in with a hose or something of that sort. so that we don't endanger firefighters on some of these really critical things. Anyway, I just think it's worth starting to look into. Maybe we could become a beta test site or something for robotic firefighter.
So we're not going to discuss that tonight. It's to
No.
put it on the list for the
Yeah,
next
Right,
meeting.
okay. No,
But what
that's-
I'm saying is,
It's an interesting idea, I mean, everything changing.
I mean,
Okay,
we don't have to have a whole session. I think the chief, if he could just look into it, I would appreciate it.
Okay, so that's the proposed.
So do you want it on the, as in a proposed agenda item, or you just want
Or do
the
you want
chief
the
to
chief to-
see what he can find out?
Let's start there.
Okay.
Okay, okay.
Okay, so I'm gonna count this as not.
It's not a
I was gonna
proposed
say-
agenda.
and
I was gonna say
add
it's
it
not
to
a
your
proposed
director's report.
Right, so it's not, so I was gonna say, does anyone else have a proposed agenda item? Because right now we don't have any, when we got consensus,
Be a
have the
first.
chief look into Director Bernstein's idea. Okay, no new proposed agenda items, so we'll move on to item 14, committee reports, ECRA, we didn't have a meeting, facilities.
Facilities did not meet. Actually, you're the facilities guy this time. I'm just the co-member. Yeah, we didn't meet.
HR, finance met.
Finance did meet. I have just two things in addition to obviously everything Elaine covered and all the finance stuff was already covered, but we did have a full investment review and market review with PFM, our finance advisors that manage our funds. And I thought it was just worth pointing out two things. One is they did provide a cumulative number, so dollars earned by interest and dividends of just under $1.2 million from July to December. So 6 month, that 6 month number was just under 1.2 million in dividends and interest. Also worth noting that, and we had this conversation in the meeting, generally speaking, while the interest rates are in decline, our investment returns in dollars is remaining relatively constant because we have more money to invest. So we're getting a lower return on what we have because rates have been under pressure, but because we have more money, we're basically offsetting it. So our run rate of investment returns is staying pretty constant. It's not going to, that's not going to always be perfectly correlated. If rates go from, kind of the 4% roughly distribution yield we have today, if they go to 2, we're going to drop. But in as much as they're going up and down by a couple basis points, we're kind of absorbing that change as they go down by a couple of basis points because we have more revenue coming in. We're putting more money under management. And then the only other thing I wanted to just mention to the full board, which I think is important, is that PFM did provide their kind of annual certification of compliance with the district's investment policy.
Oh.
And so just important for everybody to know that when they give us these reports at the finance committee, they do provide the update that says they are in compliance with our investment policy. And as I think many of you know, our investment policy continues to get extremely positive gains, even though we are underweighted in some of the riskier categories. We're performing comparable to the agencies that are taking more risk.
Right, and that's mainly because the main goal is just principal preservation.
Preservation.
Yeah, so it's a pretty conservative approach, but we're still making good.
It hasn't cost us anything to be conservative as of yet. It
Yeah.
could in the future, but right now it's not. And they're in compliance with that policy.
Great, thanks, Gary.
Sure.
Okay, moving on to the liaison reports, Atherton.
Atherton met, but there was nothing of relevance for the fire district, so I'm not going to report out on it. They have a meeting tomorrow night.
Maybe Palo Alto, Robert?
I don't know if I reported this last month, but I know that the city of East Palo Alto is undergoing University Avenue changes. From Donahoe to Bay Road, they're looking to configure it in a way that's people friendly, bicycle friendly, car friendly, tree friendly, and anything else is gonna be friendly going down. And I don't know what that's gonna do to response time. How much of these improvements gonna hinder or speed up response time when the trucks have to leave out, heading down Bay Road, University towards Bay, as well as towards Donahoe and other places.
How long is that gonna take?
They just started a process, a thinking process, getting the consultants to draw designs and drawings, so it'll probably take another year before they can.
So that's something the fire district should give input on, considering where Station 2 is?
Well, you know, if they haven't, they should, I mean, the city should.
Chief Schleiss is actively involved with the city of East Palo Alto on their traffic calming measures. Probably as we speak.
Okay.
But yeah, I was just talking to him about that 2 weeks ago. He's engaged.
Oh, cool.
Great.
Disengaged.
Stay out of it.
Okay, City of Menlo Park, I just attended the city council meeting on January 27th, and for what everyone know about our Creek JPA presentation by Margaret Bruce tonight, so everyone seemed to be very interested, and I'm glad that Mayor Nash was able to be here tonight. Yeah, Mayo County.
Oh, I have nothing to report.
Okay. Hearing. Okay. ALS JPA.
We met and we went over the radio infrastructure project. They put out for bids for a new vendor, new contractor to do the radio system, communication system. And
Did they elect new officers?
Hmm?
Did they elect new officers?
no, Rico's still not present, so.
So where's the next meeting?
We also, 50% of the meeting in closed session.
Okay.
Yeah. That is totally irrelevant.
When here, CPA basically you saw the presentation, so I'm gonna probably go to one of the more of a meeting. With directors reports, anything here? Robert? Charles?
Robert.
Oh, Rob.
No, we went to the committee meetings, the recommendation for the commission.
Oh, what?
Right, and then, I attended a badge fitting ceremony with Fairfield City Police. So people got loaded that into there. So I have a report.
Okay, I just have similar report first, item 17.
Is this your president's?
Yeah.
Oh, and then Director Bernstein, we're putting your item here that you brought up during the proposed agenda item? To have. Look into.
Yeah, so the robot, the
Robot firefighters.
the robot, supplemental robot.
Because it's not a proposed agenda item, so.
So you can put it in your director's report.
Oh.
He's already done.
You wanna make,
Yeah. Okay, and in my president's report, I just, badge pinning ceremony was great. Michelle, thank you for making that a very special event. And also.
it was mostly Shin, but.
Okay, Shin, really saying Shin for us. Mark and then I also went to the county recognition for committees and commissions, and that's all I have got. So any other last comments? Then I'll adjourn the meeting at 9:27 p.m. Thank you. I'm just looking at you.